Well, hello, everybody. It's good to be here. We are being recorded, so we will try and make this more official at this point. But also it can be really informal, obviously. We have an outline of what we want to talk about in terms of what the trip is going to be like and about, what's included, what's not. And we have a frequently asked question document we can share. But we also can just respond to your questions if that's, we don't want to waste your valuable Saturday morning. And maybe most of your questions are included what we would be talking about, but I'm fine going either way.
And maybe we should introduce ourselves first, just for those that are on, just so in case there are some that maybe view it later and weren't able to come to the adult education classes. So I'm Lisa Grafa.
Yeah.
And I teach at BSU. And
German.
I teach German at BSU. That's what I meant to say. Okay, so then go ahead.
And I'm Martin Grafe. I work with Korea language voters and attend First Lutheran along with Lisa, who's a member there.
Yeah.
And then I am a German native speaker who got transplanted to Bemidji, which is not a bad thing. So, and I'm excited to lead this trip. I've done Read Together, led a trip of the family to Iceland in 2017, 17 of us, 2017?
Yeah.
And so I guess that's our group leading experience. I did join a group of high school students in 1984 or something. So that was my first, But been to Europe, of course, many times and feel very comfortable there, native speaker of German. So we look forward to bringing this group over.
And Becky.
Yeah. And I'm Becky Verkles. I work for Sanford Health and I do project management there. So I like to do all the behind the scenes.
She's been managing this project.
I ask a lot of questions.
Which is good.
Like
it helps us understand what people are looking for.
What's happening.
Right.
And I'm looking forward to going on the trip.
Of it?
Yeah, and are you a member of Calvary?
I am a member of Calvary.
Yeah, Dennis DePew is my name. Yeah, I'm a member of Calvary, and I guess I've never been to Europe. I mean, and I saw this, where did I see it? Wherever I saw it at the office there.
Right.
But geez, just check into that. And I mean, my friend, Steve,
right,
he would be my roommate, but now we're still kind of on the fence here, so. But he is, I think, maybe more so now than I am.
Okay.
Well, we'll convince him.
Yeah.
Because I think it'll be a really great trip.
Happy to answer any questions he has or you have, and even beyond this today, obviously. By phone, by meeting at a coffee shop or wherever. Yeah.
And don't forget that on the 30th, we would like to do a German luncheon at First Lutheran. So if this is being recorded and if people are kind of late to the idea of coming along, you can get some answers then as well.
Of course.
But on October 30th is when we'll have a German a lunch to celebrate the Reformation and to kind of kick off the trip. People who are going to go can and
we're just accepting a free will offering. So
yeah, so anybody's welcome, and from any congregation, even non-members can come if you have friends that would like to try some German food. But RSVP please is it okay, Pastor Corey, if they RSVP to First Lutheran?
To our email.
Or to our email, okay, that would be the best.
Okay.
Managing,
we don't want to burden Karen.
Yeah, don't burden Karen.
Oh, it's fine, but yeah.
Okay.
And then on Zoom we have
Corey Furman. Happy to be here, member of First.
Yes.
Perfect.
Exactly. And hoping to go on a trip.
Yes.
So what kind of questions do you have? Let's start with that, because then we can fill in with what we have planned beyond that. Dennis, any questions that we can help answer? Like what would take Steve off the fence? What kind of questions?
Yeah.
Well, I guess I don't know. If he might be reading this or looking at this on Zoom. I mean, he does Zoom.
Okay, nobody's there right now besides.
Okay.
Corey.
You can tell us.
Right.
Yeah. But it's being recorded, so he can always come in and look and read through it
We'll
and talk about it.
Yeah.
So maybe we should just go ahead and start with your first question that you put up there, Martin.
Yeah,
Well, the itinerary has us kind of going through the trip first, so. we
Oh,
could,
okay.
so
So go to the trip first.
what kind of questions do you have for us?
well,
Or should we just go through the trip itinerary?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, let's do that.
Yeah, he's
You have
doing
that
his cooling
document
right now, and you
ready,
don't want to interrupt the cooling.
Good,
meeting,
good.
for sure. Isn't it good? Yeah.
You have the document handy, Becky? or-
Yeah.
Yeah, so just a little bit about background about the travel agent we're working with through the Concordia Language Builders. I have a colleague, a former colleague, who's worked with the same travel agent for the last 10, 12 years. And so her name is Donna. The travel agent is Manuela. She's Belgian, lives in Atlanta, but also has a place in London, and then they have a place in France, I guess. So she's in Europe right now. She is there most of the time. And it's often accompanies groups, but we asked her, Lisa and I feel really comfortable leading the group, and so the travel agent won't come with us. It'll be us leading the group essentially. And but she has customized the trip for us based on what we kind of suggested, with input from Becky and others as well. And she is very, open to kind of adjusting things, and we've made some changes over time. Now we're kind of set with the itinerary, not that we couldn't change something, but it gets more difficult because of hotel availability for a larger group and those kind of things. So what's included is 14 nights in a hotel. And it's in this packet we have here. The first page kind of goes through that of what's included. And then the various hotel stays. We're typically 2 nights in one place. Leipzig is where we're spending 4 nights. So that's a little bit different, and we did that because it's a bigger city. There's lots to do. Also, lots of connections to Johann Sebastian Bach. Leipzig is where the revolution started to kind of bring down the wall. So there's history in that way as well. But it also is a Luther city, and so
I just want one for
yes,
myself.
you might want to you
Okay,
have
go
it
ahead.
available on there, and then otherwise, we're following pretty much a lot of the places where Luther spent time or was active or and anybody can, feel free to chime in, Lisa or Becky. Typically, we're staying at least in 3-star hotels. That's kind of from the travel agent's perspective, a good experience. And, kind of make sure that we're in good places, but not super fancy places.
It's the most
It's
economical.
the most
for sure.
economical.
It makes it
Exactly.
affordable, where I think anything more than that gets a little bit.
And with each hotel, there is a breakfast that's included. It's usually, what they call a continental breakfast because it's a European continental place where we are. So there's a widespread of options, breads, jams, and some of them there might even be the waffle maker kind of thing, but it's typically more European. And there's cereals or granola, there's hard-boiled eggs, there's Germans, the Europeans eat cold cuts and cheese on their morning breakfast bread. So there's breads, and there's probably hard rolls, which are very common in Germany, different types. And so it's a pretty hefty breakfast usually. We have 3 tours, guided tours that are included in the trip. One of them is in Leipzig, a half-day city tour, and then 2 castle tours, the Wartburg Castle and Neuschwanstein, which we can go through a little bit later. In addition to that, there is $100 within the budget. There's a $100 entrance fee kind of allocation. So there's other places you want to go to. Sometimes you have to pay extra, and so that's included. We can pay for that. That's already covered in the cost. That's kind of projected. The bus is dedicated to us. The bus driver has some, so we have to cover the bus driver's lodging and meals. It's all included in there, but it's our bus. And I think we have a bus that brings us to Leipzig. So for the first few days, and then we just get a local bus while we're in Leipzig for any tour we do, just so we don't have to pay, because the bus driver is local, so we don't have to pay for lodging. So that brings the cost down a little bit. And once we leave Leipzig, we have another bus that takes us for the rest of the trip. And while we're in Mittenwald in southern Bavaria, by the Alps, where we do a day of hiking, we have the bus driver gets a day off, which kind of is a requirement as well. So that's all embedded already and kind of planned for. price that we have right now is $3,300 or $3,295. I just think of it as $3,300, and then that does not include the airfare, which will probably be around $1,200, $1,250 at this point. And we won't know that cost until toward the end of November, simply because the airlines don't let you book until about 11 months before the return date. So if we come back mid-November, so then mid-October next year, so then mid-November is the time when the travel agent can start booking flights. And in order to get a group rate, we need at least 10 people to be on the group rate. Otherwise, and we're looking at 18 to 20 people going on the trip. That's what the cost is based on. And then, so some people might want to spend longer or go earlier. We know some people have talked to us about that already, and the travel agent will work with that. We just need to make sure that hopefully we give at least 10 people during the round trip with the group to get the group rate. And then the deposit is due end of October. So on the day we do the luncheon, the idea is that that's kind of commitment Sunday for the trip at least, with a deposit of $1,100. We just divided it into three $1,100 payments, essentially. The first due at the end of October, the next at the end of February, and then that's July 15th now, by the way, that has changed. She would like it 10 days out, just from a having funds available standpoint to finish up paying the hotels and that kind of things. And yeah. Any questions so far? Just on these kind of what's included? Okay. You have questions? Corey?
I do not.
All good, Becky?
Not yet.
Okay, all right. Then, so we get there, typically, we were planning on leaving Minneapolis on a Friday afternoon, evening. That's typically when flights leave for Europe, going through the actual itinerary. And we fly overnight, get there in the morning, typically sometimes between 6 and 8, typically in the morning. We'll get our luggage, go through customs, find the bus driver, hopefully, without too much hassle. Frankfurt is a big airport.
Is it a direct flight from?
We don't know yet, but I suspect it would be. Sometimes we might be going to Amsterdam, which means we go through customs there.
How much time are we talking here?
The flight?
The flight?
The flight is about 8 hours.
Oh, just.
If it's a direct flight from Minneapolis to, it could also, I guess sometimes they go through Detroit. It depends which flight we end up picking, and, to be part of the cost question as well.
The group rate,
Yeah, sure, yeah. So there could be, rather than direct, there could be a Detroit or Amsterdam stop, I would think. Yeah. I mean,
But we would stay together as a group.
Yeah.
If we're going together, we'd stay together as a group, and that will, it kind of expedites things too, if we're together and, we know, how that goes, so.
We'd hate for anybody to get left
Right,
behind.
we'll make sure it's
We'll
not.
make sure everyone's together, yeah. I took a group of college students over, and they were gonna spend a year in Austria, and oh my gosh, I'm sure you'll be much easier than my college students. We had especially some people who overpacked and had huge
Right.
luggage. So yeah, we'll
If we
give you
can
a
go
packing
through that
list
kind
at
of
some
stuff,
point.
we can go.
We can help with
before
that,
the trip.
telling you what kind of weather to expect, et cetera.
That probably was the women that overpacked.
Well,
Oh,
you know, they
wow.
nobody told you that you can't use the same plug-in, right?
Yeah.
In Europe, they have a different,
Right.
anyway.
Okay.
So we had, they
We'll
had
make
their
sure
curling
people are
irons
prepared.
that you can't even plug in Germany. So anyway, it's just how it works.
And we're gonna offer before the trip, kind of a,
Yeah.
like, fact sheet of, these are things to think about before
Right.
we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, packing.
If you don't have a passport yet, it probably would be good to get that started pretty soon.
Oh.
Because the airline will need that actually for
Mhm.
making the reservation. So once we get there, we'll get on a bus and we'll drive over right to Eisleben, which we will stay the first couple of nights. And that's, well, actually Munster, that's where we're staying. And yeah,
Well, Eisleben and Mansfeld are very close
Close
to
to
each
each
other,
other,
so it's
exactly.
in the same area. And I haven't
within
seen
half
what
an hour. Yeah.
what her hotel plans are, but both of them are just very close. So, and that's where Luther started. That's where he was born and went to elementary school and kind of spent a lot of his time and actually died in Eisleben as well, in Mansfeld.
So we'll spend, and so we'll get there on a Saturday, so we'll probably on the bus, take have lunch somewhere along the way, most likely, because just, and then once we get to the hotel, my thought is that we get a chance to move in, settle in, maybe take a nap for people, not too long, because then it gets a trend change.
Jet lag, yeah.
Jet lag, some people don't sleep well on planes, and so, then people might sleep on the bus too, we can take a pulse of the group at the time. But then I would suggest, and maybe along the way, well, Saturday, often there's markets in Germany, farmers markets, but it's a really big cultural thing. So maybe, we
Depending on
can
what
stop
time we get
along the
there.
way
you know,
somewhere.
stop.
And what's available in Eisleben or Mansfeld, we'll figure out something. But the other thought I had is for the afternoon, just to, since we've been on a plane and on a bus for a long time, just take a walk or a hike, not super long. And the same thing, that's a very common thing for people to do on Sundays in Germany. So, and there's a number of castles that I think in that packet about geography, you can kind of see all the castles around there. And so we'll probably find one of those castles and do a little trip and
Wander around a little bit.
have lunch and have coffee, and just kind of easing into it. But also, of course, visiting the Luther places in Eisleben and Mansfeld along the way. And then after those two kind of getting settled in and adjusting to jet lag days, we move on to Leipzig, where we'll spend 4 days actually. So that's kind of nice to not have to constantly keep moving around at the beginning. And
There's so much
Leipzig has so much to see, and we have a
Leipzig.
couple day trips planned from there. One I assume everybody will want to do because they're Luther oriented, to Torgau and to Wittenberg from there. And then, right? So that's
Yeah,
part of
that's
that, yeah.
part of that.
And then there is a mountain range or low mountain range, just south of Leipzig that is really has a lot of folk art in terms of wood carving, those kind of things, and that might be fun for people to go. But we also want to give people a chance to explore and discover things by themselves while in Leipzig. After that first city tour, you kind of get an overview. And there's lots going on, typically music-wise, and so as we get closer to that time, we'll identify what might be a fun concert, orchestral or choral that we could take in, or both. Right?
Or organ. I mean,
Or
one
organ,
of the things about Leipzig is it's where 100 years after Luther, Bach wrote a lot of his cantatas and a lot of his music. So it's very fun. And so the organ still exists that he played. So it's fun to go and see some of that and hear. There's also very famous choirs that are a part of this area. And it'd be fun if there are some concerts available. It does coincide with the Germany's national holiday, which is actually a relatively recent holiday. Germany was reunified in 1989, and in 1990, on October 3rd, was the official day of reunification. So it's like their 4th of July, only instead of an Independence Day, they unified the two Germanys into one country again. So that is October 3rd, and that's while we are in Leipzig. So that would not be a good shopping day because nothing will be open, but it'll be a good day for a lot of other kinds of experiences. Especially in regards to the modern Germany and modern history, because it's historically it's only been the last 20 years now, or what is it? It's 1990, 30 years. 30 years that it's been reunified and it's been the national holiday. So October 3rd is hopefully we'll maybe make it up to Wittenberg and you can wander around there, but also it is the national holiday in Germany. So we'll have to kind of play it by ear. If there's something really cool that's happening in Leipzig, maybe we'll have to flip those 2 days so that we can take advantage of being in a city where this holiday would be celebrated, and then we maybe go to Wittenberg the next day. So there is a little flexibility, I think, in this schedule by having us be in Leipzig for a few days. So.
And that's kind of the beauty of having the bus too.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Move when we need to.
Exactly, and we can kind of talk it over, and we can kind of see what happens. What's going to be available. They won't have the concert series information out probably for another few months, and
Right.
so we'll
That's
have to
great.
kind of wait and see. Yeah,
Yeah.
and what kinds of celebrations they'll be doing. So in 1990, this will be 33 years after the reunification, so it could be something special. We'll see. Anyway. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah,
didn't
so-
mean to-
no, that's totally fine, no.
I just wanted to let people know that there may be some flexibility because we want to take advantage of everything that we possibly can,
Right.
so.
And then after that, we move on to Erfurt, which is where he studied. And from there, we do Eisenach and the Wartburg. And on the way to Erfurt, if there's interest in the group, we also could stop at one of the concentration camps. Buchenwald is right on that route, actually. So I know it's not Luther, but you know, some people might be interested in that.
Especially people interested in history.
Right,
Is it in Erfurt where he was a monk as well as
Right.
being at the university?
yeah.
Yeah.
And actually in Erfurt, we'll be able to stay at the Augustiner Kloster, the monastery, where he stayed.
And live-
They've converted that into a hotel, yeah, or at least some of the rooms.
Parts
in the
of it,
space,
yeah.
yeah, so that'll be kind of fun, kind of unique.
Yeah.
And I guess Leipzig, we had a little earlier, one of the Europe's, Germany's oldest coffee shops is there, and was owned by somebody in my family long ago. We have 250, 60, 70 years ago. So it's a historic monument or a building kind of being renovated right now for millions of euro. And so we don't know if it's going to open in the fall next year or not. It's supposed to open sometime in the fall, but
So we're hoping that we'll be able to have a cup of coffee where famous people drank coffee in
That's
the
right.
1700s. So we'll see if that all works.
in
out.
my family's coffee.
And
shop.
my family's coffee shop.
I
Oh
was
my
gonna say,
God.
and I assume you've been there.
Oh, you've been
We've
there.
been there.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Exactly. Actually, I would have been
Actually-
in Leipzig a couple times, but
Yeah, because we weren't able, when I was like, so I'm old, but when I was studying in Germany and in Austria, years and years ago, it wasn't really very available to get into East Germany. So it wasn't until after 1990 that it was possible. And Martin was living in Germany in 1990 or 89 to 90 kind of, and right around that period of time. And it was, we weren't married or anything yet. So he was letting me know in the United States about what was going on. It was pretty exciting, actually. But we did go back with our kids in 2007, and that's when we got a chance to kind of go to the Cafe Baum. So yeah,
meet some cousins and family, that kind of thing,
yeah, yeah.
And so the states that Leipzig and Erfurt and Bern are all in is Thüringen or yeah, Thuringia, is that how you say it?
Thuringia, yeah.
And there, you know, that whole area along with Nuremberg and Bayern, Bavaria, there's some great sausages for those who like that kind of stuff.
Lots of good food, actually.
That kind of
all over.
specialties in the area.
Yeah,
There'll be good food definitely all along the way.
yeah.
Um,
It's also part of, so between Saxony and Thuringia, we'll be going through those two states mostly. They're two different, very interesting historic states.
And then Nuremberg is a good stop, with a stopover on the route from Erfurt to Nuremberg on day 10. We'll stop in Coburg, again, another important spot for Martin Luther, doing some translating of the Bible there as well. And then we'll move on to Nuremberg, which is very well known for probably mostly in the US at this point, from a history standpoint, for the trials of
War crimes.
Nazi criminals after the war. So, war crimes, yeah. But also, if you have ever had a German Lebkuchen or gingerbread kind of treat at Christmas, Aldi sells them actually
Yeah.
in Bemidji here as well.
Who's
Aldi,
Oh,
Aldi,
yeah,
the grocery store. Right around this time they start selling them.
Good to know.
Yeah.
I should get me some. So they're made in Nuremberg. They're kind of famous for that. And then on the way down to Mittenwald, we would stop in Augsburg, of course, one of the critical spots for Luther as well.
Yeah, yeah.
What do you want to say about that?
It was a very important city to the Holy Roman Empire. So Augsburg was where Luther was there and appeared before the Diet of Augsburg, which was an imperial court. So It was one of the places where he kept, he kept being asked about his ideas and the church kept trying to get him to recant and he doesn't recant. So that's kind
And
of.
it's
one
also
of
they
those.
try to capture him somehow.
And they
Escape.
tried to capture him, yeah. But when he was a younger guy, he went from, he was going from his monastery down to Rome, and that's when he went through Mittenwald.
Which is the next
So
one.
that was when he was younger. When he was older in Augsburg, that's where the whole confession, the Augsburg Diet happened when he was older, but when he was younger, he went through Mittenwald. So we're kind of going through his life, except for this is the one spot where we jump back in time to his younger days when he was a younger man and went down to Rome before all of his ideas kind of became, he was very involved in being a good Catholic. I mean, he was very involved in heading down to Rome and I don't think ever anticipated the idea that he was going to start this big church thing, but it was his, so he did what any good Catholic monk would do, and that was walk down to Rome. So, yeah.
And Mittenwald is pretty deep in the Bavarian Alps, amongst the highest mountains in at least the German Alp region. So that'll be kind of fun to be there. And we'll spend a day of hiking when people can choose an hour-long hike, or Becky will probably go for the 10-hour hike. About 10 hours, but
They'll take the hour-long hike and then sit in the cafe.
that's right. And there's nothing wrong with that. Buy some souvenirs because we're almost done with the trip.
That's
There's
right.
something for everyone.
Oh yeah, definitely. All along, I think we want to try and pace it so that people have that option, for those who want to be less active and moving around, and once we're in a certain place, and for those who want to explore and go further. Then on the way from Mittenwald and to Worms, we would stop at Neuschwanstein, which is the famous for Disney castle, and one of the King Ludwig's 3 castles that he built.
It was crazy.
A little crazy.
Yeah, a little crazy.
And
He never actually finished them, and he never actually did them. But
And actually, Neuschwanstein, there are some features or some rooms that are modeled based on what King Ludwig saw at Wartburg. So he was there. So there's a little connection between those two as well. So it's kind of fun to see both in that regard. And it's the model for the Disney castle.
there you go.
Yeah, and then that takes us to Worms, our final stop for the Year of Worms. I'll get back to the historian.
Well, that was where he was kind of finally said, I
Recant.
cannot recant, and that's where you get the famous. And it's a speech. The speech that he gave in Worms is kind of renowned throughout the world. People still will quote it and have. It's one of those kind of speeches that it's like fourscore. It's like Lincoln, and there are these particular speeches that kind of change history, and that's one of them that he gave at Worms, saying that he would not recant, and he is, so that was.
But the cathedral there is along with one that's nearby in a city called Speyer, are like 1,000 years old, right?
Yeah, so if we're looking
The church itself is
architecturally,
worth looking at.
right, it's worth, and architecturally, it's one of those kind of gems that are, that is important and historically as well in the evolution of church architecture.
And that one must have seen once in life. According to my uncle, who is an architectural anthropologist.
Yeah, you don't get much more like
He would often give me rides from one family place to another family place when I was growing up, and we'd always have to stop at a cathedral or a castle along the way, because that's just
because he was an
one
architect.
must see these things.
One must, and he is he was, his main focus is architecture and historic architecture.
So you've been to many castles.
Oh yeah, churches.
They kind of litter Germany. I mean, we saw, I think when we were doing the geography thing, there's in your little packet, you can find, there's all over just that one little area, there are tons. And it's all because these families would have both their their residential palace or castle, and then they would have their fortress. And so there's often within one family, there'll be more than one. They had more than one kid, so they'd build another castle. And so it kind of became this big, so all over Germany, really, there are castles and there are ruins, like your little town in Altenburg growing up.
Yeah.
Had some kind
Some
of
Roman
little,
ruin in the woods somewhere.
you could come and trip across a ruin of a little castle somewhere. Yeah, but yeah, obviously not a powerful family since it's now falling apart. And
So one of the
Yeah.
things I didn't mention at the very beginning of what's included, we included 7 dinners. We thought some people, it's nice to have the group dinner. So that's already part of the price that's included. But it's also nice to be able to explore and do your own thing sometimes. And, maybe you want to eat, but we won't necessarily, well, we'll probably do German food most of the time,
Yeah.
just because. But if you want to do something else, there's lots of other restaurants, Greek, Turkish, Argentine, Vietnamese in Germany, all those kind of things. If you're looking for something different. Pizzas are interesting and fun. We probably should do one pizza like that.
that would be kind of fun.
Because they're very different. They're like putting hard-boiled eggs on pizzas and, well, it's an
And
Italian
tuna-
pizza
tuna
more versus
fish,
an American
tuna-
Italian
They do
pizza.
tuna fish.
Tuna fish, yeah.
It's, yeah.
And you
so
get
they-
your own personal size.
You
pizza.
don't order like for a big, you don't
Everybody-
order big, they would find that just odd that we would have this table size pizza. Everybody gets their own, kind
Yes.
of, and that's sort of a German way of doing it. Well, it's Italian too, so.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so we'll have one of the dinners obviously will be a nice kind of wrap up dinner in Worms. We'll find a nice place where a travel agent will. And then typically we'll probably have to get up fairly early in that last day. The flight's usually between 10 a.m. and noon. We got to be there a couple hours early. We got about an hour drive to get there. So once we're in Worms, it'll probably be time to make sure that people can pack everything they bought. Put it back into a suitcase.
Yeah, see how heavy the suitcases are, whether you have to pay extra.
Any questions about the trip? Anything that you were hoping to hear or haven't heard yet or would like to see or wondering if we're gonna see along the way?
I'm wondering about, spending money.
Yeah.
Will they accept US money?
We'll have to exchange it, but yes,
Or what-
yeah. And a lot of places today will accept credit cards, so we would we will make sure that people know to call their bank or credit card company ahead of time to make sure that they know you're in Europe, so they don't decline because they might think it's a fraudulent use of your credit card unless they know about it. So,
So we've never had trouble as long as we've called ahead.
right,
And said, called like, First National here has been great. They're able to, they put a little thing on
Note.
your account
Yeah.
that says that you're gonna be and they ask which countries you're gonna be in. So if we do fly through Amsterdam, we'd probably say,
yeah.
Netherlands and Germany.
Right,
Just so that if something were to happen and we needed, the flight somehow gets delayed and we wind up staying one night in Amsterdam because of the weather or whatever, you'll still be able to go buy some food or whatever you want. So usually it's best to kind of give them the heads up and then, but they take most credit cards. So in Germany, in fact, they almost prefer it. We brought some dollars, when was that, maybe? And and we wanted to exchange dollars, just exchange for
at a bank.
euros. And they were like, well, we'll have to make sure these aren't counterfeit, so you have to come back tomorrow. So it was kind of like, well,
And go to a
It's
certain
actually-
branch.
yeah, and go to a certain branch to exchange. So it's harder to exchange actual currency than it is to just use a credit card and then.
But some smaller shops don't do the cards, so they have to surcharge those kind of things, just like they have more.
Just like more
common
often here,
as
yeah.
well. But the other thing is ATMs. You can use the credit card and get then the euro from that.
And actually, the exchange it's about even with. the
Currently,
US
it's about even, and that's to the benefit of us. Usually, I mean, historically, it's been more. $1 gives you about 90 cents, 90 euro cents. So currently, you get a euro 2 cents versus just 90 or 95 cents. So it's actually a good exchange rate right now.
Yeah.
But that can change.
And it can change and, kind of daily. It's hard. You
It
have to
does
kind of
change.
just
It
watch it.
fluctuates a little bit.
It's always going up and
I
down.
mean, usually it's not more than portion of a penny kind of thing.
But it does change.
It can-
So, and then over if, like now, if we kind of lock in now, that might be really good to our advantage because it might change.
So the deposit,
Most likely it'll balance. so
the
it'll go
deposit that's
over.
due at the end of this month, on the 30th, is actually, is $1,100, but only 500 of that is non-refundable for, the travel agent, and I'll find out more information about that to make sure we understand why, where that goes kind of thing, and
Well, my
how long it's not, yeah.
My question is, when we make our deposit on October 30th, and if we don't have enough people to run the trip,
Right,
will we not be sending the money? So that we get our deposit back?
right, exactly.
I guess that's what I
Right.
want to know.
Yeah.
Like if for some reason we don't get enough people.
Right.
I wouldn't want us to all lose $500.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So we have to check on that. for sure.
So part of the other $600 or $1,100 deposit, we decided it would be good to pay now so that the travel agent can buy euros at its current exchange rate, which is really good. Because if the exchange rate gets worse from a US standpoint, exchange standpoint, then we actually gain by exchanging money right now and getting more for it. So, I made a little calculation, little spreadsheet yesterday I was going to share with you. Just, with the current exchange rate, if, let's say it goes down to 95 cents, the $600 is about $40 difference, right? And so we get $40 more right now with the current exchange rate. And so that, almost pays for a night in a hotel, double occupancy. Right?
That's awesome. Yeah, well, and it's more likely actually to readjust itself going back to, it's been like
But-
1.2 for a while, or 1.02.
Or even 1.04.
1.04, so it's kind of, right now,
It's unusual.
it's more likely that it'll go back than it is that it'll get better. This
Right.
is really kind of where, I don't think I've ever quite seen it this low
Right.
for a long time. So,
Right.
yeah. Initially, with the Währung reform or the currency reform, when they rejoined together, East and West Germany, they kind of originally kind of based it on a 1-for-1 with the dollar, and then immediately it started changing. So
Right.
it's always going up and down. And so, yeah. So,
With any currency.
with any
Yeah.
currency. Yeah, actually the pound is doing pretty poorly too, I guess.
Right.
So, good thing we're not going to England.
Should we go to the FAQs? And the first one, in terms of cost and payment plan, we kind of talked about already, unless there's questions. That's the next page.
The last page on the, yeah.
Frequently asked questions. There we go, with the numbers. Yeah. That may be the second page. If you flip it over, you probably can, yeah. And so, it kind of outlines what we talked about at the beginning in terms of, the payment plan and what's included in the price. Then somebody asked the question, why do we need to pay by check versus PayPal? And the answer from the travel agent is that with PayPal or Venmo, often there are fees associated. So with this kind of cost of a trip, it could be up to almost $200 in terms of fees. And so she recommends this, that we as organizers collect checks and then send them all to her office with FedEx, and she'll cover the FedEx costs actually. Yeah. And then, will there be something that kind of outlines the agreement between the group and the travel agent? And she will provide that here hopefully within the next week so that we can share with people before they put a deposit down. She'll also send us information about the travel insurance, and we recommend that fairly strongly. I would definitely encourage people to do that, simply because, with the current situation, especially with COVID, and there's individual people's personal health circumstances.
Yeah.
I want to see what options there are in terms of travel insurance, to see what actually is covered by that.
Mhm.
What kind of cancellation would trigger the insurance to pay back, or
And what kind of fee, how
Right.
much is it? The, interestingly, I used to never buy travel insurance. But, ever since COVID, I mean,
Right.
Andrew is the one that kind of taught me, our youngest son, who's only 25, has now decided he always will buy travel insurance. Because he actually had a flight that
within Europe.
within Europe canceled, and he had spent quite a bit of money on it, and then it was canceled and he, and because the airline kind of went under because of the COVID situation. And he was just out.
Oh, it was a no frills airline.
It was kind of a no frills, you know, because he was a student, whatever, and he says now he thinks it's totally worth it, because.
Yeah.
You know, so anyway, that was that, I had never really thought about it before, but I do think with the COVID situation, it's
And
probably.
you don't know like what the travel insurance will be yet.
We will know shortly.
Okay. I mean, take a guess, couple hundred,
Yeah. Right.
and,
200 to 300, I would think.
and would that include a medical if we
There's,
have,
there's for like evacuation kind of thing.
well, or if I get sick over it.
Right,
Have to go to the hospital, an emergency.
Yeah, we'll have to see. There might be different versions of that, but yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
If, the worst thing that would be, depending on your own insurance, what you have right now, that you pay for it first, then you have to
Get reimbursed.
request reimbursement. It might be good to check with your domestic insurance to see what their,
Yeah.
For
what
that
their
kind of-
policy is for that kind
yeah,
of
for
thing.
that kind of situation.
I'm on Medicare,
Right,
but then my supplement is where I
Right.
have to check with my supplement.
Right,
and see
right.
what- Yeah.
what their policy is for
Good
that.
idea.
Yeah, and
Right.
then it's just really important to keep any receipts.
Right,
So that, you know, that's pretty obvious, but sometimes in the craziness of travel, people will think they're throwing away their receipt from some weird dinner or something, and that is their, you know, so you just have to kind of keep track of the ones that are really important, so.
Then there was a question about, you know, what the risk is of the price fluctuating potentially, and, you know, with the exchange rate, there is a risk of sorts. And I've emailed her last night to kind of get a sense for that in terms of, you know, does every adjustment to the exchange rate change the price? Or what kind of buffer might be built in? I assume she has some buffer built in, because, you know.
My question on that is, once we make our commitment by October 30th,
Right,
then are you saying that the price may change like we may have to pay more after October 30th?
only if there's a big change in the exchange rate potentially.
So how would we know, or, so you're saying we have to take that risk?
There is a bit of a risk, there is some risk, and I'm asking her to
Okay.
see how big that risk is.
Okay,
That's one of the things.
okay,
I want to see if we can pin down with her. Yeah,
because that would be good, I think, good to know, and then also in the contract. So we
Right, exactly.
understand
Yeah.
that if we have to pay more money, I think people need to understand what that means.
But I would assume it would be mute, I mean, not, it's very excessive.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not gonna be, yeah, crazy. But it might, you
Well, you
know,
know, but what's not accessible to one person might be accessible to another person, right? There might-
Yeah, so that's why I
Right,
think if we have that very clear, that would be.
Right,
yeah.
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 like.
I also asked her that if the prices are very beneficial to the, the exchange rate right now, is there potential for refund, right? I mean, does it go both ways or not?
Right,
Because I've heard that in some group trips, sometimes, you know, you might get $100 to $150 back or something, right? So,
Depending on the.
yeah, it really should be.
or do we have an extra, extra
Okay.
bottle of wine on that last night?
Well, you'd almost think it would be, because if there's gonna be an agreement that it could go up.
Right,
Yeah,
Well,
if it goes down.
if
but-
if it's directly associated to the exchange rate,
right.
then there should be the
And
other
then-
way too.
And then an email just this week, she said that the bus company, because of the gas price situation and the energy situation in Europe right now, gave her a heads up that there is a risk, not a chance, but that there might be a surcharge on the gas for the bus. Which I know from the Concordia language will just be experienced that with local domestic, Minnesota bus companies. This summer when the prices went up so high.
So
I think they've taken it back down, but if it goes back over 450 or something, they'll
Yeah.
need to charge extra, which makes sense, right?
So I think what will be important for us as a group is to know what that
Right.
policy is,
Yeah.
so we can anticipate having to pay more
Right,
or having to pay less, based on those circumstances. Because we don't want to have, all of a sudden, it's gonna cost an extra $600.
right, and I don't expect it, right,
Yeah.
that much, yeah. And whatever the surcharges gets divided by everybody on the group.
Yeah.
And then some people have asked about, going early, meeting the group or staying late on their own, do an extra little trip, that they would like to do. And so that's, totally an option. We just need to know before we book the flights, if that's what your plans are. If you, again, bring at least 10 people, to get the group rate to fly as a group. And then a question about walking, that's hard for me to project. I mean, yes, we walk. Typically, will walk quite a bit, like up to the Wartburg. And probably, I mean, for those who have mobility, challenges, there are probably ways to get up that hill to the Wartburg with a little van or something that they provide for an extra charge typically. But
Also at Neuschwanstein.
European cities and Neuschwanstein too. But European cities and are really laid out for walking, and that's typically what we I would expect people to walk a fair amount.
It's actually quite, because you get to eat a lot, so it actually feels kind of good to do quite a bit of walking. The areas in the center of town is usually called the Fußgängerzone, which is a pedestrian zone where no cars are allowed. Because a lot of the cities and towns within Germany are they were built and started in the Middle Ages, and the streets are pretty narrow. So cars really can't fit very well in there anyway. So most of those downtown are the Altstadt, the old parts of the cities they've just decided, well, forget it. We'll just have pedestrians. So it can be really fun, very fun to go shopping and walking. And there's so much to see. It's hard to even notice until you get back to your hotel and feel like, oh, I need a large glass of wine or something, because there's just so much to do and see, and it's sort of fun. But if you can do a little bit of walking ahead of time, like start maybe walking every day just a little bit, it'll help a lot. And if you make sure you have shoes that actually, German shoes are people do a lot of walking. And there's a whole shoe culture around shoes, because so you could buy some pretty nice shoes when you're there, but they definitely have good walking shoes. Right. And they think that that's very important.
So don't bring brand new shoes.
Make sure you've kind of broken them in, and it's really good to make sure that you have some good solid shoes for walking around. There's a lot of uneven kind of, there's cobblestones and, like I said, medieval, so that's not always very flat. So it's important to kind of have shoes that aren't going to be too slippery or things like that. So yeah. And before we go, we'll find out, we'll share with you typical weather patterns, what kinds of, stuff like that you can kind of expect. So clothing, suggestions, extra money if you want, what kinds of things might be available, especially if you want to take the trip to the Erzgebirge, where there's lots of handcrafts that would be fun to purchase. And some places now will ship for you without it being too exorbitant. So it kind of pays off, because you either let them ship it or you carry it in your luggage and then pay the extra fee when you have an extra suitcase. Right. So sometimes it doesn't really make as much sense to, carry it all, schlep it all over the place, when you can just have it sent. So it just kind of depends on what you decide and how you do that. But there are some really famous areas where they're kind of one of a kind, opportunities. And even in some of the markets, they'll have handcrafts and different things that are pretty cool to purchase. So, and I think you're allowed 2 liters of wine. Oh, is it one now?
One for Christmas, 2 for us.
You may take
to carry back with you. Yeah, exactly. Although it has to go in your checked luggage, because it can't be carried on. So just so you know. Anyway, there you go. So those are the kind of tips we can kind of provide and talk to you a little bit about later too.
I have thought of 2 questions.
Okay.
One is, when we're on the tour, are we always together as a group, or will there be times where we have non-group time?
Mm-hmm. Yes, there will be time. I think there are certain there's certain options. Like if you really prefer, if you're not all that interested in going to the area where you can see this woodworking stuff, it's about an hour or so on the bus. And if you're tired of being on the bus and you'd rather just shop around Leipzig
Or look at other things.
or look at other
museums or
things.
churches.
There's lots of museums, a lot of things we'll try to suggest or include. But some things I think we'll just kind of leave it. We'll get the tour, for example, in Leipzig, and then there may be points where you think, oh, I'd like to go back and see that.
Right.
And maybe as a group, we won't all do that, but you might have a couple of friends that would want to go with you. And so I think we'll try to build in every day some time to do something on your own as well as something with the group. So that's kind of the idea, is that we'll have opportunities to do both, don't you think?
That's kind of what the idea of the 7 open suppers comes into. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you. And then my other question I thought of as we were going through this is with the payment plan, as we go along throughout the year
Yeah.
of making payments. And if for some reason we can't go for whatever reason, do we lose that money, or is that where the trip insurance comes in? Or is that two different, like, is there a policy?
Well, I
with
think the
travel?
non-refundable doesn't get refunded, and, I think I asked her about it and she was a little vague about when she'd want to have that cut off, but I know after the 7th of July payment, there wouldn't be a refund at all anymore
From the trap, so
But
from the travel.
from the travel agent, but that's where the travel insurance comes in. We have to make sure when we get the travel insurance information, how that's worded. and,
How that
yeah,
comes
how
out,
that
yeah.
works, yeah. Other questions?
Anything?
Corey? No? All right.
Good?
Dennis, anything else?
No,
You good? Should we give you some extra copies for your friend? Would you like to take something?
yeah, I should take the next copy.
We can do that, yeah. And then, I guess one question we wanted to ask is, there were a couple people who thought they can't come with the existing dates, but were wondering who might be able to come 2 weeks later if we were to go 2 weeks later. Would that make a difference for this group, or would that still be anybody who's here with that week? That's still an option.
I think it's an option, just would have to make,
Mhm.
check with work and.
Right,
go through
yeah,
the
yeah,
process
yeah,
and
yeah,
to see if it-
yeah. I'm just trying to see, if that makes a difference with us having the group that we need to make this happen, then that might be something to consider.
So I guess I do have another question. Sorry.
Yeah, Corey were you gonna add something, Corey?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was thinking about the lack of the 20
Uh-huh.
at this time.
Yeah,
Because part of that could be just the fear of recession and kind of what the market's doing right now.
right.
If that happens, is there an idea to push it a year and try again, or what are your thoughts?
I was kind of thinking of that too in my mind, like.
Yeah.
Because I know, we're just looking at the offerings. Those are down too for no
Right.
reason,
Yeah.
except that I think it's the market.
Right.
It's
Economy,
it's the inflation, and folks are just barely having enough to make it through the month as it is. And so I wonder if that's a cause, or I don't know.
right.
Could be.
Yeah.
The other thing that I was thinking is, instead of maybe doing a year later, we could, we had originally thought about doing a spring versus a
Yeah.
fall.
Spring of
If we
24.
went to the spring of 24, that would make it easier for me personally, just because I am teaching until, I'm at ESU, and it ends in early May, so that would give us time then. It might work better for others too, I don't know, but based on this kind of feedback, maybe that would be an idea we could talk about. But I think we can kind of look and see how this goes on the 30th. We're gonna celebrate no matter what, and
Yeah.
Right,
we're gonna.
That German food.
Exactly, and I do think that, this was a really kind of a fun, I don't know, maybe Pastor Corey doesn't think it was somebody, but it was kind of a fun series to do the kind of, we did a Luther Adult Ed series, which I thought was kind of, it was fun, I thought. And
I thought it was fabulous.
and it would be kind of cool to look at maybe doing some more reading And we've been planning on doing some kind of prep work before going in October anyway. But if we wind up moving it until the spring or whatever, just we'd have some opportunities to maybe do some, reading Luther's Small Catechism and coming up with some discussion points or different other things that would work. That may be kind of interesting to do.
My favorite biography of Luther is Luther the Reformer by Kittleson.
Yes, I have that. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. So that'd be interesting to do a book study. The other thing I thought would be to pick out some really important, historically important readings, like the speech he gave in Worms, and some different things that really kind of. I would like to also read a little bit more about his, because he and Erasmus had this debate going on, and it'd be interesting to read a little bit more about, because I think that gives you some insight too as well about him, but also about Erasmus and what the thinkers at the time were talking about. So anyway, there's so many different ways you could go with this. So just to throw that out there, but I think we can stay with these dates and see what happens on the 30th, and then and find out a little bit more from Manuela about like the trip insurance, some of these questions that people have brought up, and see how that works best.
And then I just had one other thought on leading up to the trip. We could possibly, if depending on interest of the group, but we could possibly do a private Facebook group or an email group where we're accessing resources from the Luther House of Study. They have a whole Reformation series, they have it broken down into weekly snippets. So as you go throughout a year, we could be learning little bits and pieces about Martin Luther and Lutheranism as we go along. So that's another thing we could do leading up to
Moving up to the trip.
Yeah.
One of the things, I don't know if any of you have seen this, but this is probably 10 years ago. PBS had a special on Martin Luther. I mean, it was like 3 nights.
Oh, cool.
I mean, I didn't see them all.
I didn't see them, yeah.
And I'm just wondering if they have that at the library here at Calvary. That would be interesting to really, look at that from the perspective of not the church.
Right, but
And for what I see in there, it was just fascinating.
I'll look into that. Maybe Pastor Corey knows.
I was gonna say, I'm guessing it might be around the 500th anniversary, which was 2017.
right.
That those types of things were coming out quite rapidly.
That's probably correct. I would,
Yeah, that'd be cool to do like a video series too. I mean, there's lots of opportunities for learning a lot about this.
And also we'll be learning, but we'll also be getting to know each other. So as we go along the year, we're not, we're friends by the time we go on the trip.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
if you find that out, where that is. Actually, I suppose it's probably on YouTube.
Yeah.
Right.
Very likely. I mean, that's probably,
We'll
but
look into it.
I'd like to actually get them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sit at home and look at
Yeah,
them.
exactly.
Right.
Like the old fashioned way.
Yeah, there's all sorts of ways to do this.
So, yeah.
With a strip, what's it called, film strip kind of?
Yeah, like microfilm,
Michael's.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, I do think there's, lots of different opportunities. That'll be cool.
That's one of the other questions, and we're starting getting into it. Is there other things that you'd like, other info, or other topics you'd like to have covered or addressed during the pre-trip kind of sessions?
Well, one thing I've been thinking about,
Yeah.
just because I've really got into German baking over these adult ed series,
Yeah.
I kind of want to do for whoever might be interested, like a cookie exchange or something like that. Maybe in December, or even it could even be after the holidays when it's not so busy and we don't, maybe we're ready to have cookies again.
Yeah.
In January or February.
But of course, you could also just cover your Christmas baking, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
true. Yeah, have a whole German
That's
Yeah.
right.
Christmas theme this year.
Yeah. Good.
Just a thought. There's a lot of ideas rumbling for pre-trip, and I feel like we'll, as a group, once we know who's going.
Right.
Yeah, we can really start to gel.
Yeah.
And it's always, we can always invite other people. So if there's anybody who's interested and wants to come and join in with, even if they can't go on the trip or they, whatever.
That brings up an interesting question. I mean, after the 30th and you've got X number,
Right,
well, let's say 3 months from there, well, I got somebody, boy, this person's really interested and wants to
Right,
go. Can
right.
that person buy in?
Yeah.
After that?
Well, let's find out from Manuela, but I
Yeah,
think
you
so.
can.
I think it'd be great. I think it'd be
I would
great
think
to
so too.
get more people.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, the more the merrier.
Exactly.
we have room on the bus, we know that.
Yeah. So,
Because the
good.
bus, I mean, the bus is bigger than our minimum of 20, so we know.
Oh, yeah.
So we know we
Oh,
have
yeah.
room there.
Right.
Great.
all right.
All right.
This is not, well, this won't be the last.
But if there's any questions, we have the email, right?
And feel free to spread the idea around to others who you think
Yeah.
might be interested and just kind of talk it up and
Yeah.
we're happy to answer any questions, through that email that we have or phone call, with Becky or me or Lisa. We're happy to, or meet people and whatever.
And on October 30th, we will know
Right.
where we stand.
Right.
A lot of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Like our son,
We'll give more information on the 30th,
for
right?
sure.
Yeah.
our middle son just got married and his his wife's parents are joining us on a trip too, so. We can.
So we can spread out a little
Right.
bit, yeah.
We'll see
Yeah.
the other in-laws, the other son in-laws want to join too.
Oh, they're Methodist, I don't know. No, I'm kidding.
All the in-laws on the spot. All right,
But yeah,
stop the recording and. take it.
Everybody's good?
thanks.
All right.
Good to see you.
Thanks for joining us
Thanks for joining
today.
me.
Bye.
Good questions.